This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor.
This is just me talking about my personal financial journey. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Enjoy the show.
There is something incredibly intimate about looking at someone's investment portfolio.
Oh, for sure. It really is.
It feels a lot like opening up their kitchen pantry. You look at the shelves and you immediately see the heavy staples they rely on to survive every single day.
Right. The practical utilitarian choices.
Exactly. You see those and you see the occasional sweet indulgences.
Yeah.
And then you see that one brand new, slightly out of place jar sitting right in the front, and you just have to stop and ask, wait, what is the story here?
I love that analogy because a portfolio is, well, it's essentially a financial diary.
Yeah.
It goes so far beyond just a list of randomized ticker symbols. It tells this living, breathing story about what a person values, what they fear, how much risk they can stomach, and where they ultimately think the economy is heading over the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at your portfolio, yes, you, the listener who shared this snapshot with us today, it is a genuinely compelling diary to read.
It really is. So, welcome to your custom deep dive. Today, we have a highly targeted mission. We are taking a magnifying glass to a brand new move you just made in your portfolio.
A very specific move.
Right. You went out and added exactly 11 shares of Wendy's company, Class A stock ticker symbol WEN. It is currently trading right around $7.77 a share.
Yep.
Looking at the anatomy of an investor's decision-making process in real time. This is exactly what makes this show tick. We aren't just looking at the corporate mechanics of a fast food chain. We are analyzing why you, specifically, decided to buy a slice of it.
And to do that, we are going to systematically break down the landscape of this specific decision.
Right. Where do we start?
First, we need to map out exactly where this new asset fits into your broader financial ecosystem, especially regarding how you balance your consumer brands.
Okay.
Second, we'll examine the actual corporate health of Wendy's, which involves balancing some pretty severe domestic struggles against a massive international growth plan.
Which is a whole situation on its own.
Oh, absolutely. And finally, we will dissect the underlying psychology behind your invest in what you know strategy to see if it actually holds up under scrutiny.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because before we can judge the stock itself, we have to understand the ecosystem it just entered.
Right. The context is everything.
Exactly. We need to look at where Wendy's sits in your specific financial landscape. Looking at the snapshot you provided us, the image.pn file, we see some absolute heavy hitters.
Oh, yeah. You are holding some major established giants.
We are talking about Costco, Disney, IBM, and Johnson & Johnson.
The big guns.
Right. So if your portfolio is a sports team, IBM and J&J are your expensive, reliable, veteran mainstays. You pay a premium for them, but they are expected to deliver steady, predictable results season after season.
Right. They anchor the team.
But then you have Wendy's, sitting there at roughly $7.77 a share. It has the lowest nominal share price on your entire list. It is the low-cost rookie draft pick.
That's a great way to put it.
But here is where I want to push back a bit, or at least challenge the premise. Is blizzing a stock just because it has the lowest nominal share price on your screen actually a strategic entry point? Or can that sometimes be like an illusion of value?
That is such a good question because confusing a low nominal share price with a cheap valuation is a classic trap in retail investing.
Right. It feels cheap, but is it?
Exactly. Let's unpack what nominal entry point actually means for a moment. The nominal price is just the price tag on a single share, in this case, $7.77. But a share is just a slice of the overall corporate pie.
Mm-hmm.
If a company cuts its pie into a billion tiny slices, each slice will be cheap, but that doesn't mean the company itself is a bargain.
Oh, right.
A $7 stock can actually be wildly expensive if the company is, bleeding money and has terrible earnings.
Yeah.
Conversely, a $1,000 stock can be incredibly cheap if the company is generating massive amounts of free cash flow.
Yeah, the price tag alone tells you almost nothing about the underlying value.
Precisely.
It's like buying a slice of pizza for $1, but finding out it's the size of a postage stamp. It felt cheap until you realized what you were actually getting.
That is perfectly said. However, evaluating your specific strategy here requires looking at your position sizing.
Right, the actual amount of money on the table.
Exactly. You didn't dump your life savings into Wendy's just because the single-digit share price looked appetizing. You bought 11 shares.
11 shares.
Yeah, which represents an outlay of roughly $85. In portfolio management, this is known as a beachhead strategy.
A beachhead strategy. meaning you're just putting a little bit of money on the island to see if you can hold the territory before sending in the rest of the troops.
Yes. You establish a small starting position for a very specific psychological reason. It forces you to track the stock.
Because you actually have skin in the game now.
Exactly. You are far more likely to read the quarterly earnings report of a company you own, even if it's just a tiny fraction of your net worth, than a company you are merely watching from the sidelines.
That makes total sense.
But what demands real attention here, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's how this fits into your consumer discretionary sector.
Right. Let's define that really quickly for the uninitiated. The consumer discretionary sector is essentially the nice-to-have budget of the economy, right?
Yeah.
It's the money people spend on things they want, not things they strictly need to survive, like utility bills or basic groceries. Fast food, coffee, entertainment, that all lives in the discretionary bucket.
That is the perfect distinction. And looking at your discretionary bucket, we have to directly contrast this new fast food play, Wendy's, with your already highly successful coffee play, Dutch Bros.
Oh, yes. Bureaus.
Dutch Bro sticker, BRS, is a high-growth momentum play in the food and beverage space. It is expanding rapidly, it relies on a very passionate cult following, and its stock price trades heavily on future growth expectations rather than current mature profits.
So Dutch Bros is the high-octane rocket ship. It's priced for where it's going, not necessarily where it is right now.
Exactly. And by adding Wendy's, you are essentially balancing that rocket ship with a heavy anchor.
Oh, interesting.
Because Wendy's is a legacy brand. It is an older, established fast food staple. It already went through its exponential growth phase decades ago.
Right. They're everywhere already.
Exactly. So you have the aggressive growth of a modern coffee chain on one side and the mature, dividend-paying legacy burger chain on the other. It demonstrates a very intentional sector balance. You aren't just betting on one type of consumer behavior.
Okay, now that we see where it fits, the legacy counterbalance to your high-growth coffee stock, you have to look at the reasoning behind it.
The psychology of the buy.
Right. You didn't just pick a $7 stock at random by throwing a dart at a list of restaurant chains. You picked it because you actually eat the food, and more importantly, you believe in its high quality.
Yep, you mentioned that in your notes.
You told us you aren't like an everyday fanatic, but when you do go, you appreciate the product. That brings us to the classic Peter Lynch strategy. Invest in what you know.
A legendary strategy. Peter Lynch popularized this idea in the 1980s and 90s, arguing that everyday consumers often have a massive edge over Wall Street analysts simply by paying attention to their own lives.
Just by walking around.
Literally. If you are walking through a shopping mall and you notice one particular shoe store is constantly packed with teenagers while the others are empty, that is incredibly valuable ground-level data.
And the same applies to food.
Absolutely. If a fast food chain has noticeably cleaner stores, faster drive-thrus, and a superior burger compared to its direct competitors, you, as the consumer, register those data points long before it shows up in a quarterly earnings report.
It makes sense intuitively. You were doing boots-on-the-ground market research just by buying lunch.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting. If you genuinely enjoy the product, does that trigger confirmation bias?
Ooh, that's the trap.
Right. How do you separate your personal love for a spicy chicken sandwich and a Frosty from the cold, hard math of a corporate balance sheet? Because it seems to me that just because a burger tastes great doesn't mean the corporate supply chain is efficient.
That is the crucial limitation of personal taste as an investment thesis.
Yeah.
The primary advantage of the invest in what you know strategy is that you have a tactile, undeniable understanding of the brand's value proposition. You know exactly why someone would choose to spend their money there.
Sure.
But the disadvantage, and what's fascinating here, is your positive experience at a well-run local franchise can create a massive blind spot regarding the overall corporate financials.
Because my local Wendy's might just have a fantastic manager, while the corporate headquarters hundreds of miles away is, I don't know, burning cash on bad marketing campaigns.
Exactly. We have to actively separate consumer sentiment from investor sentiment.
Right.
High-quality food builds brand loyalty, and brand loyalty gets people through the door. That is the foundational first step of any successful restaurant business.
But it is only the first step.
Yes. Getting the customer in the door doesn't guarantee a profit. You have to look at unit economics, how much it costs to produce that burger, how much you pay the cashier, what the rent on the building is. Personal taste always has to be verified by corporate data.
That means we need to look under the hood.
Let's do it.
Because tasting good isn't enough on its own to carry a stock. We have to look at Wendy's actual corporate strategy right now to see if your gut instinct holds up to macroeconomic scrutiny.
Right.
And right now, based on the research, it sounds like they are fighting a defensive trench war at home against inflation while simultaneously launching a massive offensive campaign overseas in China.
That is a very accurate way to frame it. They are fighting a very intense war on two completely different fronts.
Let's start with the first front, the domestic headwinds.
Yeah, Wendy's is currently operating in a brutally tough landscape in the U.S. fast food space. We are seeing significant consumer softness, largely driven by persistent, grinding inflation.
Let's explore why that matters so much for this specific industry. For the longest time, fast food was the ultimate pressure valve for the American consumer.
Oh, absolutely.
If groceries got too expensive, or you were working a double shift and didn't have time to cook, you hit the drive-thru. It was the default cheap and easy option.
Just safety net.
But over the last few years, the cost of a standard fast food combo meal has crept up past the $10 or even $12 mark in many areas. Consumers are hitting a psychological wall.
They really are.
They are looking at the menu board and saying, I simply cannot justify this price for a burger in a paper bag anymore. They are either trading down to even cheaper options, or they are just eating at home.
The underlying value proposition of fast food is being heavily scrutinized by a tired, squeezed U.S. consumer. And Wendy's feels that squeeze on both ends.
Because their costs are up too.
Exactly. Consumers are balking at higher prices, but Wendy's costs are rising. Labor costs are up. Beef and agricultural commodity prices are up. So domestic margins are incredibly tight.
Okay, so that's the trench war at home.
But then you contrast that saturated domestic struggle with their aggressive global expansion. This is the second front.
Right.
Wendy's recently struck a massive deal to build up to 1,000 new restaurants in China over the coming years.
1,000 restaurants. That is not a small pilot program to test the waters.
No, not at all.
That is a massive, all-in offensive campaign overseas. It takes an incredible amount of capital, logistical planning, and corporate focus to pull something like that off. So they are trying to hold the line at home where things are tough while simultaneously trying to conquer a massive new international market.
And to manage this dual mandate, they are executing a few specific internal initiatives to free up cash and streamline operations.
What kind of initiatives?
The most prominent one is their Project Fresh turnaround strategy.
Project Fresh, okay.
Yeah. This involves modernizing older restaurants, completely updating the aesthetic, and significantly pushing into digital-first initiatives.
So apps and screens.
Exactly. We are talking about installing self-service kiosks, driving customers to mobile app ordering, and enhancing their digital loyalty programs.
Okay, let's pause on those digital initiatives for a second, because a touchscreen kiosk doesn't make a burger any cheaper for a family struggling with inflation. So what does this all mean for those Digital First and Project Fresh initiatives? Are they enough to offset a tired U.S. consumer? How does a piece of glass in the lobby actually help Wendy's bottom line?
It comes down to two highly effective mechanical changes: ticket size and throughput.
Okay, explain ticket size first.
When a customer orders on a kiosk or an app, the algorithm never gets tired and it never forgets to upsell.
Ah, right. It always asks if you want fries with that.
Always. It will prompt the customer to add cheese or upgrade to a large fry or add a dessert. Furthermore, there is a documented psychological effect where customers feel less social friction ordering extra food from a machine than they do from a human cashier.
That is so true.
The data consistently shows that digital orders yield a higher average ticket size.
So the machine removes the shame of ordering a second order of chicken nuggets, and the company makes more money.
Exactly.
What about the throughput?
Throughput is about speed and labor allocation. If you take the employee who used to stand at the cash register taking orders and move them to the kitchen to help assemble sandwiches, the entire restaurant moves faster.
You can process more cars in the drive-thru per hour.
Yes. In the restaurant industry, this is known as a margin preservation play.
Let's translate margin preservation play for a second. Think of the company's profit margin like water in a bucket.
Okay, I like that.
Inflation and higher labor costs are poking holes in the bottom of that bucket. These digital kiosks aren't necessarily adding a massive new hose of water to fill it up. They are essentially acting as plugs to stop the leaking. They maintain the profit margin in a tough environment.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. Project Fresh and the digital initiatives are vital survival tactics. They keep Wendy's competitive in a soft domestic market. But the China expansion.
That's the actual hose of water.
Exactly. That represents the actual growth engine. The U.S. fast food market is heavily saturated. I mean, there is a Wendy's, McDonald's, or Burger King on nearly every major intersection. To find real exponential growth, they have to look at emerging middle classes in international markets.
So the U.S. remodels are about efficiency and survival, and China's about finding a totally new frontier to scale.
Yes.
But while the company is spending all this capital on remodels and international expansion, what happens to the retail investor? What happens to you, sitting there holding your 11 shares while the company attempts this massive juggling act?
This is where understanding dividend payouts becomes crucial. Wendy's is a dividend-paying stock.
Right.
While the company is executing these massive, expensive pivots, they are routinely paying you a steady stream of cash simply for holding the stock.
Let's explain how that changes the math for an investor.
Yeah.
If you buy a stock for $7.77 and the company pays you a dividend of, say, 25 cents over the course of a year, your actual out-of-pocket risk has just gone down. You essentially get a tiny refund on your purchase price every time they issue a dividend.
We call that lowering your effective cost basis. Over time, those cash payouts act as a shock absorber. They provide a psychological cushion when the stock price itself is volatile or trading sideways. You are basically getting paid to wait while the long-term corporate strategy plays out.
All right, we have the portfolio context, we understand your psychological reasoning, and we have laid out the rather complex corporate reality.
Time for the final verdict.
Exactly. Now it is time to put it all together and debate the actual move you made. Were those 11 shares a wise acquisition? Earlier, we talked about balancing out the high-growth Dutch Bros with a mature legacy brand.
Right?
In financial circles, establishing a small starting position in a dividend-paying consumer staple brand is traditionally viewed as a smart defensive play. It anchors a portfolio that might otherwise be too heavily weighted in risky tech or high-growth names.
Yeah, consumer staples are generally considered defensive because, in theory, people will always need to eat, regardless of what the broader economy is doing.
Wait, if a company has to launch a massive turnaround like Project Fresh and bank on building 1,000 stores across the globe just to find growth, is it really a defensive staple? Or is the listener actually going into a risky transformation project?
Well, the headwinds are undeniably real. Executing a massive international expansion and a system-wide technological remodel at the same time carries significant execution risk.
Right, a lot can go wrong.
If the China expansion hits regulatory hurdles, or if U.S. consumers entirely reject fast food pricing, the stock will suffer. However, if we evaluate this based purely on your specific execution as an investor, the defensive nature of this trade comes from your portfolio management mechanics, not necessarily the underlying corporate drama.
Meaning your math protects you more than the actual corporate strategy does.
Precisely. By buying just 11 shares at roughly $7.77, you have strictly limited your total capital risk. We are talking about a total investment of less than $90.
A drop in the bucket.
You have secured that beachhead position at a low nominal entry point, meaning you have skin in the game without betting your financial future. And crucially, you are collecting that stable dividend.
Right.
You are quite literally getting paid cash to wait and see if Project Fresh and the Chinese growth engine actually materialize over the next few years. If the turnaround fails, your overall portfolio exposure is minimal. The damage is contained.
But if it succeeds?
If it succeeds, you are perfectly positioned to add to your stake with a deep, tracked understanding of the company's trajectory.
So the defense isn't in what Wendy's is doing. The defense is in how you bought it. You didn't bet the farm. You just bought a reasonably priced ticket to sit in the stands and watch the game unfold, and they hand you a little bit of cash every quarter just for sitting there.
It is a highly calculated, risk-managed move. You took an everyday consumer preference, a simple appreciation for a good product, and translated it into a disciplined financial position.
So let's briefly recap this journey. You took a calculated chance on a $7 stock, primarily because you liked the food and appreciated the quality difference compared to the competition.
Right.
You took that small, targeted position and slid it into an absolute fortress of a portfolio alongside massive giants like Disney and J&J. It acts as a grounded legacy counterbalance to your fast-growing Dutch Bros stock.
A great balance.
And while U.S. inflation and changing consumer habits pose a very real threat to their domestic profit margins, their aggressive expansion into China, the operational efficiencies of Project Fresh, and that vital, stable dividend make this a fundamentally sound, calculated play.
It really serves as a textbook example of using personal consumer insight to build a tracking position. The overarching strategy is sound, even if the corporate path forward for Wendy's is, well, steep and complex.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over regarding your invest in what you know strategy. We started this entire analysis by looking at your portfolio like a kitchen pantry, trying to understand why this specific new jar was on the shelf. You bought it because you appreciate the high-quality food at your local physical restaurant.
Yeah, that tangible local experience was the foundational thesis of the purchase.
But here is the question for you to explore on your own. As Wendy's focuses intensely on digital-first initiatives, pushing customers toward touchscreens and mobile apps, and as they funnel immense resources into a massive international expansion across 1,000 new locations in China, what happens to the domestic, local, high-quality food experience that originally attracted you to the stock in the first place?
Ah, the classic paradox of scaling a retail business.
Exactly. If a company successfully transforms into a global, highly automated digital-first machine, could your local personal consumer thesis, the whole reason you bought the stock to begin with, eventually become obsolete? Even if the stock price goes up, does the company you invested in fundamentally change into something else entirely?
It really makes you wonder.
It's something to think about the next time you tap a digital screen at the drive-thru.
Thanks for letting us take a deep dive into your portfolio. Keep trusting your gut, but always, always verify with the balance sheet.